Welcome back, everybody. This is the Men on Purpose interview series. We have Chris Albright here. Thank you so much for jumping on here, Chris. How are you?
Great. How are you doing, Zach? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. I'm great. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm really excited for this interview to pick your brains around some key elements here that I think will really help everyone at home, all the boys turning into men or men stepping into their full power and being a man on purpose. And so, for everyone at home, for those who don't know Chris, he's a transformational coach. He focuses on helping busy professionals get into shape and regain their health. So, we're going to talk about breath work, how he utilizes breath work, how he has had an amazing health transformation himself, also business practices, and also human design, because one of the most amazing philosophies that we were just chatting about before the interview starting here was around this concept of the difference between born to be what we are born to be versus conditioned to be. And so we're going to dive into really uncovering the lid on how to live a life on purpose and in alignment. Chris has retired from the Marine Corps in 2013. He's had his own IT business, and now he gets to choose his own and design his own life around his coaching business and helping people at home. So let's dive into it, Chris. Thanks again for jumping on. Let's
Absolutely.
just start off with your story. So how did you come to be a transformational coach focusing on all this? Because it's a quite a unique combination of tools that you have here that I personally have been around for quite some time, but you're pulling them together in a really unique way.
Yeah, I fell into this transformational lifestyle, transformational coach thing. Like you said, mostly because of my own story. I started out, I grew up in the Midwest in the United States. Didn't like my hometown very much, and as soon as I had an opportunity to leave town, I joined the Marine Corps, and I traveled the world, and I spent 20 years serving my country. Um, And when I retired in 2013, I got tired of the job search game, tired of writing resumes, trying to figure out what to do when I had to get a real job and play adult and all those fun things. Um, so I opened my own business. I ran an IT company for about 6.5 years, which is quite a difference from what I did in the military. I was infantry, shot machine guns, rode around in Humvees for a while, and jumped out of helicopters for a while, and spent a lot of time in the Middle East and the Far East, and um, basically just kind of doing the Marine thing, right? So when I opened my IT business, it was um, a significant change from what I had been doing. I had been lucky enough to get my bachelor's degree in IT management and my master's degree in cybersecurity while I was in the military. So running that business sounded like it made sense. Sounded like it was something that I was educated to do, and I had the attitude of being a Marine. I can do whatever I want as long as I put my mind to it and kind of focus on getting the job done. But I realized after a few years running that business, I was working too hard, not taking care of my health, and not eating right, not sleeping at all, drinking a bit too much, um, not taking care of myself, and my health started to slip. I had managed to get diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all in a matter of a few years, and wasn't living in a good place. I got pretty angry and disgruntled because of my work. Um, just wasn't enjoying life at all. And then in 2019, I decided to make a change, mainly because I was taking about 6 prescriptions every day, trying to manage my symptoms for all my health conditions I was taking, and it wasn't fixing the problem. I was taking more and more medications every day, and the doctor's only solution was to watch my diet and to exercise more, and it wasn't fixing the problem. So I took up on myself in 2019. I said, okay, I'm going to stop with all the prescriptions. I have to find a solution to this. And I got very serious and deliberate in my health. Started something very simple. Started with walking, you know, get off my butt every day, go out and go for a walk at least for some amount of time every day, and gradually increase the amount I was walking and running and hiking and whatnot. But then also got very deliberate in my diet, had to transform the way I've been living my life, because for 20 years in the military, I could eat pretty much anything because I was always constantly running and training really hard. And I was burning a lot of calories, so I had no problem eating just about whatever I felt like it. But as I was aging, running my business, I wasn't active at all, and I was eating all the same things I'd always eaten. So I put on a ton of weight. Um, and then I decided that I was 44. It was 2019, and I felt like I was probably 60 years old, just miserable, hating everything, and just kind of dragging. And I was afraid, honestly, I was afraid I was going to have a heart attack or have something else happen because I was so um, poor in my health, right? And I had to shift. I had a decision to make. I was like, I'm not living like this anymore. So I decided to start walking every day and watching my diet. And within the first 90 days of this change, I had managed to drop 45 pounds. I corrected my type 2 diabetes. I corrected my high blood pressure issues. I corrected my high cholesterol issues. I got rid of GERD, so that my heartburn was all corrected. Everything I had been doing um, for years, it wasn't fixing the problem. All of the conditions were corrected. Everything was clean bill of health from the doctor. And then I managed to drop another about 40 pounds during 2020, during the pandemic. Everybody was sitting around kind of on lockdown, and I was continuing to walk inside and outside and focusing on my health. So I managed to get back down to the weight I was when I was in the military by simply doing a few simple things every single day. And then you mentioned the human design and breath work and mindset work. A lot of that came just because on my health journey, I understood that it was a physical effort, but it was really a mind game trying to get back to a good state of mind and an attitude that I had to shift my lifestyle to live a healthier life, to clean up my attitude. And that's when I got into the mindset work and the human design.
So interesting. So interesting. It sounds like you've been on a wild ride, and you've got
Yeah.
two children. What was it, in the teens?
Yeah.
One.
Two boys,
Yep.
27 and 22 years old.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Juggling life, moving through the identity of what you said as being a part of the Marines. And I have other friends who are in the army or have been in the army, and they've they're trying to transition and assimilate into reality where they've gone from this intense regiment and discipline and stretching and like following authority, following orders, to then into the world where there's no orders, there's just like no boundaries, there's no
Right.
discipline. So how did you find transitioning from that, I guess, ecosystem in the army to in the Marine Corps to then into the real world? How did you hold yourself accountable? And did that have a part to play in that downfall of those healthy routines and things like that?
Well, that's funny that you mentioned there's no rules and structure in the civilian world, because that's what I was just talking about with somebody else the other day. Is I've been retired now for 10 years, and I'm still trying to figure out what it means to kind of operate and live in a world where there's laws. Obviously there's rules and whatnot, but there's no real structure. You just kind of go through life and you make things up and you try to live the best way you can. And usually you're trying to figure things out, and you go through life trying to figure things out. And it's very different from the military, because in the military you have a very specific structure of how to move to the next level, how to progress through the training to get to be qualified to go on a deployment, for example. Or if you want to get promoted, you know exactly the schools you have to go to, and you know exactly how long it takes to get to the next rank. And when I look around in the civilian world, when I was running my IT company, it was a franchise. So there was a support system in terms of like products and services and whatnot, but really there was no structure to it. I just kind of had to figure things out. And what I realized, and part of why I kind of went off the deep end and lost or gained so much weight, is it's very different being in a business, because you're kind of in the trenches by yourself. You're kind of running every day. You're just trying to keep the business afloat, trying to get more clients, trying to support the ones you have, trying to keep everything going. And there's nobody on your left and right supporting you. So you're kind of all alone. And running a business, it kind of get in your head and you kind of start to question things. You have a lot of doubt, you have a lot of stress, you have a lot of frustration, financial issues, client issues, family issues, and all that builds up and there's no way to let that pressure off, right? And so the difference I noticed is when I was in the military, even though I was going through a lot of crap, a lot of different times, a lot of hard training and a lot of hard deployments, a lot of hard experiences, I was always with other people going through the same thing. And we were there together and we could share in the misery and push each other because we were going through it together. And in the business, you're like out there on your own, hooking and jabbing, trying to fight your way through life, figuring out what it means to one to be a civilian, but also run a business. You're kind of looking around like you're alone, you know, and you can't figure out what's going on. And honestly, in 2019, when I was having those pretty dark thoughts and really kind of hating on life and myself, I realized I had to get out of that business. So I sold it right before the pandemic. I managed to get rid of that. Thankfully, there was a buyer that took my burden off my hands so I could get my head straight and kind of focus on figuring out who I was, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, I did 20 years in the military right out of high school. And then I jumped into a business immediately after that. So I never had any time to myself to kind of figure out who I was and what I was supposed to be doing and even what I enjoyed doing. You know, it was always go, 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 go. And at some point it just got to a point where I had to kind of stop and reassess, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's my purpose? Why am I here? And what's the meaning for my life, so to speak?
Just some small questions. Yeah, what's the meaning of
Yeah.
life?
Right,
Why?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing too extreme, right?
Just some early morning, questions and answers. No, that's so interesting that you said that. It's so important that you said that. I think there's so many people out there right now who are going through the same thing or continue to go through the same thing and don't really know how to transition from that. I'm really curious to know, when you were in the army, and obviously you had the people around you and you had that support and you're moving all the time. What would you say would be like the main primary question or the main focus in your reality compared to, say, not having people around you in the real world, having to do business by yourself and not feeling supported and not having that discipline? As you know, as a coach, what we focus on expands in our life. So what were you focusing on then compared to then when you had those challenges in the real world, so to speak?
Um, it's different because I always had a lot of stress in my life. I mean, we all have different stressors and different things going on and problems we're working through. But in the military, it was always um, I had the mission. It was always very clear to me we're in the military because of our service to the country, and we were assigned a job and we were assigned a position. And usually we were assigned people that were subordinate to us that we were in charge of, that we had to look out for and take care of. And so people to our left and to our right were our peers. They would, you know, kick us in the butt if we were kind of getting slack in our day to day and not keeping up, but they'd also keep us in check and make sure that if we needed help, they would give us help. And we were in charge of people, so we had to look out for the people below us. Um, it 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 wasn't necessarily my mission, but it was the mission that I was there to serve during that capacity. And I had lots of Marines that worked for me. I had lots of Marines that I trained and educated over the years. For example, when I was in the Marine Corps, I was a martial arts instructor for about 12 years. I was a marksmanship instructor. So I had different skills in addition to my primary jobs. So I had all different things to keep me engaged and involved. In my business, the difference was I had one employee. I had a lot of back office support. So they were remote workers that were running a lot of the day-to-day stuff. But it was just me and my one employee. And then usually my clients who were complaining to me about some problem they wanted taken care of. But I didn't have anybody that was in the fight with me. It was me running with the business, trying to figure out how to keep it going and how to move forward. So a lot of the decisions I had to make, I couldn't go too far and have somebody say, hey, this is probably what you should consider doing, or why aren't you doing this? I mean, there were other people running a business. Obviously, they could give me their perspective on business, but it was a very different situation. I was in my own little fighting hole, so to speak, with that business and kind of doing my own thing. So it was a similar kind of fight, but it was me kind of in the Wild West by myself, just kind of trying to figure it out.
Interesting, interesting. And then, yeah, gosh. And then, so how did you then integrate and make the transformation? You know, you said you'd lost over 80 kilos through COVID. What were those habits that you started to implement that got you back on track? Did you start the breath work
So
then, or was it the human design that kicked you off in the right direction? Yeah, what
yeah,
was the flow of events?
it was, so I lost all the weight because of the power of decision. Before I even understood what that was, I made a decision that life the way it wasn't going to continue, and I had to take whatever action necessary to make that change. And so, thankfully, because of the time in the military, I had a very good sense of discipline and understanding that the routine of doing something every single day to get better at it, to move forward, to make progress. So I just decided this is what I'm going to do every single day, and I'm going to keep tabs on the progress and my gains every single day, or my losses, so to speak, with the weight. Um, but that dedication and that um, commitment to doing the work every single day, and then later on, after I lost the weight, I kind of had an epiphany or a realization that I went through that struggle, that experience of being fat and miserable, basically, and then understanding how to lose the weight. That was my training um, to help other people see that if they're stuck in a dark place, maybe they're trying to lose some weight, maybe they're in a career they don't like, maybe they're feeling like they're alone and they can't figure out how to get to the next step. They're not sure what they need to change. That was my education and my experience to be available to help those people figure it out. I didn't get into the breath work and the human design until just recently. Last year, I discovered human design because somebody suggested that I take a look at it, because I had been aware of numerology and astrology and all those things, but the human design really caught my attention, and it exposed me to the possibility that the true self of who I was somebody else that was still out there, and I had been operating under a self or an identity that was conditioned and programmed into me because of the military and because of my experiences in the business, and it wasn't my true self, and I was trying to fit into a box that wasn't really me. The breath work is interesting because in 2021 I was working for a nonprofit organization that taught post-traumatic growth to veterans and first responders, learned about meditation and breath work and gratitude and journaling and different physical activities, wellness practices, walking and going kayaking and all those sorts of outdoor activities. Um, the breath work was introduced to me, and then last year I got really serious into it, and I got certified as a breath work instructor. One, because I wanted to use it for myself every day, but two, I wanted to be able to share it with others, because it's definitely a way to keep the body regulated, keep our nervous system more balanced, to reduce the stress, reduce the inflammation in our bodies and the anxiety and all the depression and all those fun things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
What a great combination. No, they are two fundamental strategies that help me in my daily dance with reality and stress or anxiety, which is breath and my purpose, figuring out why I'm here, the greater purpose, the greater grace, God, the divine reason I'm here on this planet. Those two things, and it all comes back to the breath. As we know, well, as I like to believe, is that if I'm in a certain way, if I'm feeling a certain thing, it's usually because I'm breathing that way. And so, or I'm focused, my mindset's focused on the past or the future, causing me to feel a certain way. So what you touched upon there in terms of you were helping, did you say veterans who are experiencing PTSD?
Correct. Yeah, it was a nonprofit organization that focused on people, veterans and first responders struggling with PTSD, and the dark places we get into with our thoughts, and anxiety and stress and depression and all those things. So I had to go through that training myself, so that I could be somebody that could guide others on their journey through that self-improvement and self-discovery.
This is, yeah, my next point is that there are so many, I guess, retired or injured veterans, and they, from my insight from some of the people that I know, there isn't much support for them. But this sounds like a great organization to be a part of for them. But it's like, what support is there for them? Like pills, or they usually get into addictions, or suicide is quite rampant amongst those groups. So this is a massive support. So if anyone's out there, listening, get in touch with Chris. This is a huge issue. And one of my friends, Tony Piazza, was a disabled war veteran, and he'll be on a disability payment for the rest of his life. But he started to get into frequency therapy, started to get into plant medicine, and he found that they helped him after the multiple suicide attempts to really get out of his depression. And now he's facilitating talks and facilitating sessions, or these ceremonies with people to transition out of that. So it's amazing how the darkness or our challenges become our biggest superpowers if we really lean into it, feel it, and move through it. And as you said, decide on a new reality. So that's really empowering that you said that. Do you have any advice for any of the military, retired, or disabled veterans out there who are on the fence or not knowing what to do? What would you say would be the best thing for them to get back on track?
So something I noticed myself personally, and I'm pretty sure anybody else out there that was in the military can relate to this. Like I mentioned previously, when you're in the military, you're constantly surrounded by others that are in the same platoon, in the same fire team, in the same company, the unit. You're all operating together, so you're constantly together, right? And when you get out, you're kind of like, okay, have a nice day, see you later, I'm gonna go home and figure it out. And you don't have that connection and that camaraderie. You have, maybe a phone call, maybe a Facebook chat, maybe a text, something occasionally, but we are very good at self-isolating when we get into a negative mindset. And the thing I can suggest is, if you're having stresses or challenges in life, to reach out to others, find somebody to sit down and have a cup of coffee with, or a beer, or even just a chat, and just kind of talk and get it off your chest. Because when you sit and those thoughts fester in your head, they don't help anybody. They get worse and worse and worse, especially if you don't let them out, even if it's just to share with somebody else. And that's something we taught at that nonprofit, is you have to be able to connect with others, especially yourself. And if you're talking negative to yourself all day long, it's not going to make anything easier. Because honestly, civilians or veterans or military or whoever, we're all going through something, right? And so a lot of times when we're going through stress, we're kind of thinking that we're all by ourselves and nobody's there to help us. And the biggest thing we can do to really kind of start working toward relieving some of that pressure and that stress is to talk to somebody else and just share what's going on. Because even if you're not asking for help, just getting it out of your body, it reduces the damage it's causing internally to your nervous system and your body.
So important. So important. Yeah. And this is the awakening that's happening as people are realizing that there isn't much support from pharmaceuticals, or potentially they make the issues worse, or that the potential counseling or always old ways of therapy or support doesn't really work as much. They're still important for some and definitely help some, but there's like 101 or 1,000 or 1,000,001 other strategies that have now, I guess, there's been demystified, or less stigma or dogma around these, maybe woo-woo or simple practices like breath work. Who'd have thought breathing would help?
Right.
Or, certain supplementation, or certain frequency machines out there now, or just getting in touch with nature. I'm really big on waking up with the sun, getting the light on my face instantly in the morning, and then at nighttime turning off all technology, or putting blue blockers on and having red lights or salt lamps on at nighttime. And we are beings of light and we're beings of darkness. We can't play light at night and we can't put darkness during the day. And so when I was playing computer games growing up, and I was inside and during all day and then all night, and then I'd wake up later in the day and I'd have all these, I guess, learning difficulties at school or ADHD or depression at times, and definitely felt quite, yeah, really, really low. I realized that later on, learning about this stuff, is that these little habits that we do, how we breathe, how we think, who we spend time with, is a massive contributing factor to the quality of our life. And so,
Absolutely.
want to quickly dive in here. One of the main reasons I created this interview series is because I watched an interview, actually a documentary by Matt Walsh on what is a woman, and it's a discussion around where boys and girls can now choose to want to have a sex change. And in some countries and states, the parents don't really have a say to it. And anyway, so Matt Walsh, goes around and interviews these kids and interviews the doctors and Jordan Peterson and all these amazing minds on this topic of, I guess, having a sex change. And so, you having two boys, two men now, as your I guess family, what is your thoughts on this? And for me, I feel like why I wanted to make this interview series is to not just be a man of purpose, which is choosing our purpose and choosing to add value to the world and our, whatever that is, but also choosing to be a man on purpose. So a man with purpose, a man on purpose. So yeah, and it's quite a big discussion in America. I know it's not so big here in Australia, this whole discussion, but I guess the question is, how important has purpose been for you and helping your boys transition into men in their upbringing and in your expression with being a father?
Yeah, that's a big topic. It's a big conversation. The only thing I can really speak to is I know growing up, I never had a father. I never have no idea who he was. So I grew up with my mother and my sister. So I never had that male role model growing up. I had a um, what they call it when I was a kid. It was called big brothers, big sisters, I think. The people that would volunteer to kind of like, as a man that would volunteer to take me out to go do things a father would do with his kid, right? So it was a short thing. We did it briefly, but the majority of my childhood, I never had a father figure in the house. And I think um, the Marine Corps offered me one, a way out of town so I could get out of the um, the place that I didn't like too much as a kid. So it was an easy way to get out of Nebraska and to go travel the world. I've been fortunate to live all over the world, but the main thing for me was it provided male role models, senior Marines to lead and kind of set the tone for what it meant to be a Marine and a man in my experience. But for me, having two boys, even though I was constantly working or deployed and wasn't as home as much as I would have liked to have been, I was always in the home with my boys, setting the example as far as what I believe to be a man, as much as possible, so that they could understand um, kind of how what it means to grow up to be a man, right? So I took them out, obviously different athletic events. They'd go to different sporting activities when they were younger. Took them out camping and fishing, and took them out for um, shooting guns and different things that I wanted to have them get exposed to so they could, have that experience and kind of understand what it meant to be able to protect themselves, protect others, enjoy life, and survive if they got in a situation where something was happening. Um, but for me, the biggest thing was when I retired from the Marine Corps. The main reason I retired is because of I got to a certain point at 20 years where I had to move to another location across the country, and it would have interrupted my son's junior year in school. So we decided for me to get out of the military so the boys could finish high school in the same town and the same school, and I would be around to um, be their father and their male role model in their life, right? So growing up, I was glad to be able to be around for my kids as much as possible. And and I can't say this is for everybody, but I think it's important that we all have role models in life to kind of help us understand what it means to grow up and to change and to kind of come into our own. And as we grow up, there's lots of challenges we all go through, and it's good to have somebody you can lean on, or at least kind of idealize and kind of look at and say, this is kind of how I want to be when I grow up.
What's going on, you purpose-driven human you? Thank you so much for checking out this interview. Zach Dean here. If you had any aha moments or questions, please put it into the comments. And while I have you here, I'd love to ask you a quick but powerful question. Do you ever dream about turning your passions and purpose into a business that helps people and makes a profit, but you don't have the energy or skill set or community or training to do so? Then listen up. I've actually created this. This has taken me 10 years of working with over 1,000 people in the health and wellness industry. I've created what's called the 28A Club. These are 28 actions of specific biohacks that give you the optimal energy, focus, and results in all areas based on quantum science and quantum biology. As you know, the frequencies in nature, when we align to them, allow us to become our fullest version. They allow us to become a high performer. When we disconnect from nature, we become a low performer, and it doesn't help to activate our purpose in life. And so if you'd like to download this is a free copy. Go to www.28a.club/join and you can download it, join the club of us high performers, and I look forward to seeing you in there.
Yeah, that's so true. I think there's so many confusing role models in the normal world, from music videos to Hollywood to cartoons to even historical figures that we might, I guess, idolize or have role models to look up to. So yeah, that's fantastic that you were there and to having that example for them. I had multiple stepdads. I didn't meet my real dad till I was about 6 or 7. So seeing and in that was fantastic. I saw examples of what to do, what to be as a man, and what not to be, and the variety definitely helped. But it was definitely quite confusing. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself growing up to, I guess, be the strong boy, strong mindset, physical body, success. There's a lot of pressure in terms of, and also now with social media and like needing to be a certain way, and it's just like it's a lot of it is a lie, I would say. A lot of it is just a push for an agenda that causes us to get stuck in the rat race or the matrix even more, so to speak. So do you have any I guess advice or tips for any young fathers out there who've maybe just dived into fatherhood? Because I know there's a lot that comes into play, and obviously how important was it to have a strong partner, your wife, I'd say, who was there to also raise them up, because you weren't there as well. So yeah, that's a big part to play in here, having the family unit, which is quite separated these days for many reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot goes into being a parent. The one thing I can say that I really insisted on kind of having a family structure was that when I was home, obviously when I was deployed, that was out of my control. But when I was home, we would have dinner together as a family as often as possible. So if it was every day of the week, we would do it every day of the week. If there was something that got in the way, if I was out of the house, or if somebody was traveling or whatever, we would not. But I insisted that we have dinner together as a family as often as possible. That way we could talk about whatever's going on with each other during the day and whatnot. But the the social media and the news, I'm honestly glad we didn't have a lot of that social media nonsense when I was a kid, and a young father, because it's just ridiculous. So much of it is fake. Everybody puts on this facade of how great life is and how well they're doing and how everything's perfect, but reality, that's just an image for that one picture, that one little post to share that they want to look like they're doing well. when in fact everybody is going through something, trying to figure things out. And more often than not, people are struggling and they don't want to confront those issues. So the main thing I can say for us is, thankfully, one, we didn't have social media as my children were growing up, but as they got old, we didn't really keep them from it, but we didn't talk about it or promote it or really kind of expose them to it early on. We kind of warned them about it, and they kind of understood that it was a lot of nonsense. And thankfully, both of them were not very interested. Something else we did was we kind of got rid of the news. We stopped watching the news and the nonsense every day. Just turned it off because there's just negativity and fear constantly in the news. Everybody's just kind of stressed out, and you can't control any of that stuff. There's no reason to worry about it because most of it's out of your control. But as far as the boys go, the biggest thing I can suggest for new parents, new fathers, or even fathers that have had kids for however long is just to be present for them. Just have a conversation with them. Go for a walk and talk, or sit down and have a chat and just kind of share your thoughts and feelings, and let them know that, they're trying to figure things out. You're trying to figure things out as well, but maybe you have a few experiences they can learn from, and to not rely on the social media and the news and the other chat and the nonsense to kind of pollute their brains and kind of get in the way. Like, turn everything off. No TV on during dinner was one of our rules. You had to talk face to face, no phones, have a conversation at least once a day, just to kind of see where they're at, see what's bothering them. And, hopefully you can share some of your experiences, because growing up, you learn things and you want to be able to share those with your kids as they grow up.
But Chris, isn't sharing how I feel a sign of weakness?
That's what people think. But honestly, that's something I learned just in the past few years, is this thing called emotions. Everybody has them. You have to be able to understand them. If you can't communicate with other people what your emotions are, you're going to get angry and get upset, because it's not an honest feeling. It's just ignoring what's really going on in your head. It's surprising how those emotions and feelings are actually useful.
And this is such an important point, because whether it's the feeling of anger or frustration or expectation or shame or guilt, or we fucked up or whatever it is. And as in my life, if I've decided to push that down and work or drink or drugs or porn or whatever these things are to distract myself, usually this little box, Pandora's box, will come. It just comes to haunt me, so to speak. So as I've done more personal growth, development, breath work, human design, reading the Bible, prayer, forgiveness work, different psychotherapy, somatic release out of my body, and got rid of the shame and the guilt and the anger and the frustration, I feel like my cup with all that heavy energy has been dispersed, and then there's more open energy to let in new possibilities, or just to be able to express and be able to share my feelings has opened up as a result of getting the trunk, the junk out of the trunk, so to speak. So as I've started to get rid of that, it's been allowed me to share how I feel and be comfortable with it, and to be aware of these idolized beliefs around what it means to be a man, and see that they're conditioned into me. And as I let go of those and be present, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm unique. We're all unique, and we all have a different, character, different kind of spice to the life, this recipe of life, I guess. And as I start to be confident in that and be around safe places, I do men's circles every Friday, or I'd go and surround myself with other men who are in a similar situation, who I would believe are men on purpose. And as I start to surround myself with other people, I get to realize, I'm not the only one who has this stuff, not the only one who has this baggage. And then there's a relatability, and there's openness to share. And now most of my friends are in that same place where we can share and be open and say, hey, I'm having these thoughts of suicide, or hey, I'm addicted to porn, or hey, whatever, I'm worried about money in my family and things. So it's such an important conversation to actually allow that to come up. And any of the boys or the men out there who need that support, find some other people that you can resonate with. Reaching out to Chris, might be a great option as well to start your journey. A coach or a mentor will save time and energy and resources rather than waiting 10 years to go through a transformation. It might take 6 months. So that's all a choice, and asking for help is the key to that. So how can people get in touch with you, Chris? What's the best way people can reach out?
I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. I don't really spend a lot of time on social media, but I am available. I also have, if you want, I can share with you later on. We can add to the post, but I have a link tree with a Calendly invite if somebody wants to schedule a initial consult and kind of a meeting to kind of let me know where they're at and what they're looking for in terms of transformation, or just kind of figuring out where to get started.
Sounds good. And then I'll put it somewhere around this video, everyone. And who do you work with the most? Like, what's
So
your
primarily who I work with is entrepreneurs that get caught up in the stress of business and life, and they aren't making time for themselves. They're working too hard, probably not sleeping very well, probably drinking too much, probably abusing themselves a little bit and getting isolated because they're stressed out about business, and they're not dealing with the stress. They're not asking for help. They're not reaching out to anybody. They're not exercising. They're not taking care of themselves, not doing the self-care type thing. But honestly, anybody that's maybe stuck in life, they're kind of figuring out that what they're doing now isn't working, and what they enjoy doing is kind of a mystery, and they're trying to figure out how to make a change, not really sure where to get started. I'd love to have a chat.
Amazing. We've touched upon some really important key points here today, and I just really like how you're bringing a holistic approach to this conversation. Your story is so inspiring, and I really look forward to people out there just trying something, just trying something different. I feel like the world can be really heavy and stressful and cause anxiety and depression, and that's the weather of life. But I think the problem is that most people forget that they can bring their own weather to the situation, and that as I've started to practice purpose-driven life, which is just being conscious of my breath, conscious of my thoughts, conscious of my actions, what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, how I'm sleeping, communicating with people. As I become more conscious to this, it can also be quite confronting. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are some shadows or limiting beliefs or blind spots I'm not aware of. But then having the awareness to go, I'm so excited to release those or work on those, so I become more of my potential. And then as I've started to create a life based on my values, based on what's important to me, based on the impact I want to make, my mindset has shifted so much from being a kid playing computer games, getting picked on and bullied, and definitely at times feeling like I was suicidal, to then years later tweaking this and getting support from people like yourself. I've been able to really turn this around. So I can't thank you for the work that you do, and anyone out there, just reach out, just get some support. Any final comments?
No, just that, realize that whatever you're going through with all the billions of people on this planet, somebody else is going through the same thing or has been through the same thing. So just talk to somebody, ask for help. Just let somebody know that things are not good if you're in a bad place. And realize the negative thoughts, they're not yours. They're just thoughts that pass through your head. So try to look at every problem you go through life. Try to look at it as a lesson. You're learning something so that you can grow and expand beyond your capacity to become a higher version of yourself.
Grow and expand. That's why we're here. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. Really appreciate you. And everyone, get in touch. Share this video around. And let's get the message out there. Thanks so much. See you, Chris.
Thank you.
What's going on, you purpose-driven human you? Thank you so much for checking out this interview. Zach Dean here. If you had any aha moments or questions, please put it into the comments. And while I have you here, I'd love to ask you a quick but powerful question. Do you ever dream about turning your passions and purpose into a business that helps people and makes a profit, but you don't have the energy or skill set or community or training to do so? Then Listen up, I've actually created this. This has taken me 10 years of working with over 1,000 people in the health and wellness industry. I've created what's called the 28A Club. These are 28 actions of specific biohacks that give you the optimal energy, focus, and results in all areas based on quantum science and quantum biology. As you know, the frequencies in nature, when we align to them, allow us to become our fullest version. They allow us to become a high performer. When we disconnect from nature, we become a low performer, and it doesn't help to activate our purpose in life. And so if you'd like to download this is a free copy. Go to www.28a.club/join and you can download it, join the club of us high performers, and I look forward to seeing you in there.